Welcome to the Insight podcast. Joining me on the show today is Andrew Sewell. Andrew is the founder of Overthinkers Anonymous and the author of the book, The Overthinker's Guide to Life. So I talked to him about, what counts as overthinking and when does it become a problem? How our perceptions, childhood, and experiences shape how we view reality. Techniques to help you counter overthinking. How one approach helped Andrew overcome his reliance on a blue inhaler, and much more. Now, before we start, I have a small favour to ask. If you haven't already, please do hit the follow button wherever you're tuning into this. And then, if you've been listening to the show for a while, I'd really appreciate it if you rated the show too. This will help more listeners discover the podcast and the insights from all of my amazing guests. Thank you. Now for my conversation with Andrew Sewell. Enjoy. So my first question has to be, what is overthinking? Because isn't part of the normal human experience to plan and to analyze, to critique and assess all these things? When does it get to the point of overthinking and not just thinking? As in, when does it become a problem?
Yeah, good question. Big question. Simply put, overthinking is when thinking is getting in the way of something you want or how you want the day to go. I mean, that's a very top level. If you go into the sort of the psychology, it's overthinking. You're either worrying about something that's going to happen in the future, so it's like an anxiety thing, or you're ruminating on something that's already happened. Like, I wish I didn't say that to my boss, or tomorrow I've got this big presentation, it's going to be a disaster. So you've created a story in your mind about how this is going to go, and you're using your super powerful imagination to, put yourself in a failure scenario. Or what if this goes wrong? What if this doesn't happen? What if is if you're asking any kind of what if question, it's usually a sign that you're overthinking. So, I mean, that's very simple. Yes, though, obviously our human rational thinking mind is really good for like planning things and analyzing things and thinking about new perspectives on things. That's one of the ways our brains, sets us apart from chimpanzees or whatever, evolutionary. But it's so easy for it to become like that superpower becomes like a saboteur. It's so easy for the thing that's like a real weapon to become something that you use to beat yourself up with. And so noticing when that happens is really important, because this overthinking, it ruins your well-being, it creates stress, kills your focus, it distracts you, it leaves you in a place of like procrastination or indecision. There's loads of downsides to this, and lots of people overthink. Virtually, it's at certain times, like virtually everyone overthinks. So like, don't make this, if you overthink a bit, don't think you're suddenly some serious like thing. I think one of my favorite books on overthinking, apart from my other book, is called Soundtracks by this guy called John Acuff. And he did a survey. He surveyed 10,000 people and said, do you overthink? And like 99.5% said yes. Like at some points in my day life, like I recognize that in myself. So it's totally ubiquitous. And I think quite often, even sort of some of the people I work with, I'm a coach, so some of the people I coach don't even know that they're overthinking. They just know that they feel tense and contracted in their minds, like heavy and busy. I mean, that's an overthinking symptom, basically.
Yeah. Well, I find that really interesting, because isn't it kind of like stress as well? Lots of people, I suppose, would say, yes, I'm stressed. And then isn't there two parts of that? The one part that is like, well, how much of feeling stressed is normal, and how much of it is your perception of your stress as a bad thing. Because we find out about that, don't we? That if you look at your stress as a bad thing, it will have a negative effect. But if you look at it as a good thing, that you are prepared and conscientious, then it can be a good thing. So there's that, there's those kind of like the two sides of it. Is it normal, but also like how do we get the definition correct? And so I'm kind of thinking the same with overthinking. Those people that 96% of people or more, was it? Sorry, said, yeah, I'm an overthinker. Is it because they're not definitely clear on the definition of overthinking, or do we just think, well, if you answered yes, then pretty sure you are an overthinker?
That's a good question. So there's something called eustress, which is like positive stress. EUS. Like that's like you need stress to sort of get you up in the morning and get out, and it's kind of like that thing that gets you ready for the challenging day. And then that becomes chronic stress when your nervous system is chronically over revved up, like it's overly producing cortisol and stuff. It's just in a revved up place. And that overthinking will be an attempt, usually, to calm your nervous system down. But it doesn't work. It just makes you thinking like even more faster. So that, like you said the word perception, didn't you? So, I mean, the word perception is absolutely everything in what I do. And because I'm going to go there now. I wasn't going to go here, but I'm going to go there because you said the word perception. So how we perceive reality, right? Like our lives is very subjective, right? So we haven't got like an objective view on life. We're always looking at life through our own, the filter of our childhood conditioning and cultural influences. So So say a very simple example. If you see a dog on the street and you've got a childhood phobia of dogs, you're going to see that dog very differently to somebody else who loves dogs. And it's like, that dog's the best thing in the world, and that dog's like, a real scary thing. So understanding your own perception and how that affects your thoughts is incredibly important when it comes to overthinking. I'm going to say something else. See what you think of this. So when we don't live in the feeling of the world, we live in the feeling of our thinking. So you live in the feeling of your perception, right? So it's like, so that almost means that you could use those stressful feelings as a guide to whether you're overthinking or not. So as soon as you get stressed and contracted, right, that could be a wake-up call that your thoughts of you're not thinking straight. It's nothing to do with the content of the thought, the specific content. It's just like, hang on, my thinking must be like, the quality of my thinking has just gone down, or I'm not thinking as well as I could because I'm stressed. Because there's like that intimate relationship between the two things. You see, do you get that?
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. That was good. Thank you. thanks for getting it. I was thinking he might not get this, but you totally got it.
Well, it might just be me because I'm so wise and in tune. But No, for sure. And it kind of I think it echoes other conversations I've had with psychologists talking about self-talk and the difference between that. Susie Redding was on the show recently, and she was talking about the difference between self-talk and just thoughts that pop up in your mind, and saying you can't control the thoughts that pop up into your mind, but you can then control your self-talk around how you respond to that thought. So I don't know if I'm getting it right here, but it sounds like you're saying that there's a similarity there, that the overthinking, you might have thoughts about the future and the past, and it's like, okay, they're coming up, but how do you respond? And are you getting stressed out about them? Or if you're overthinking, surely if you've got an interview coming up, you need to overthink a little bit because you want to be prepared and you want to be ready. But if it's stressing you out and it's affecting the relationship you have with your wife or your husband or whatever it is, then that then becomes overthinking. Would that be a fair assessment? Or am I overthinking it?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I wouldn't say that like before a job interview, I wouldn't say that you need to overthink. Okay. I would say that the vast majority of people do, including me. I do quite a lot of training, like in businesses around like pitching and presentation skills, and the anticipatory anxiety is always worse than doing the thing, right?
Yes.
So that's like that. So that's the overthinking, right? So, and everybody, that's the thing they want to help with. Most of them go out to like knock a few slides up and speak, but it's the night before that there's a problem. It's like how do you make me like so I don't have a nervous breakdown the night before? So it's yeah, and that the self talk is again exactly what we're talking about. I would use the phrase self-referential thinking, which is self-talk, which is the inner critic. It's that little voice in your head that it says, "Why did you do this?" It's making judgments. It's saying, "You must be brilliant. You must be perfect. You must do such and such. I must never let anyone down." It all has all these beliefs built into it, which cause loads of all these thoughts just naturally flow from those beliefs. And yeah, becoming aware of it, so noticing those thoughts gives you some like responsibility rather than just being, lost in those thoughts. So I would agree that there's some level of you can choose there what to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the work you do, isn't it? And that's why you set up the things that you have and your book as well, which we'll get into. How you mentioned how common it is. That you're thinking it's very common, and we see it a lot in the general public. What about the root of it? Is this kind of a learned behavior that we see growing up? Is there I don't know, is there like a genetic component? I don't know. I hear more and more about these different kind of different things that people struggle with, and that nature versus nurture debate comes up, and I don't know. What do you think about that in relation to overthinking?
I'll put a different spin on that question. Let me just give you my personal story of my overthinking journey.
Yeah.
So yes, I would say my overthinking has a genetic component in the sense that my mother's quite an anxious person by default. I'm quite an anxious person by default. Overthinking and anxiety, go hand in hand. So yes, very much from my perspective. And I would say, yeah, generally there's going to be a genetic component. There's going to be an anxiety control. It's going to depend on how much trauma you've had in your childhood. All lots of stuff's totally relevant. I think what came into my mind there when you asked the question was more like how we develop our ability to think conceptually and rationally in the first place, because that's sort of like the root cause. If you know something about the root cause of how we learn to think, then that will inform overthinking. So so when you're a baby, right, when you're born, there's you don't have any concepts for the first however long till you learn to speak, until you learn. So you're just in this world of like, sensations and sounds and visuals. And then over time, your brain starts to develop, and it's a super, this teacher, super powerful learner machine. And then you've got like caregivers who were saying like, pointing to stuff and saying table, and they're pointing to you and saying like your name, Andrew or whatever, Sam. And over time, those are concepts, right? So those things, those labels that you're learning for stuff are concepts. And if you were French, you would have a different, you'd say law instead of water. So these things are sort of arbitrary, these concepts. So, after about however long, depends on how sort of fast you develop. One day you're looking in the mirror as like a 2-year-old and you recognize yourself for the first time. Like before, you didn't clock that you were Andrew when you looked in the mirror. You just thought, you didn't even know what was going on, right? And you thought, oh, Andrew, I'm Andrew. So from then on, you've got like a self-concept, right? So this self-concept, which has no real substance to it beyond like, the labeling process that has happened, that becomes the thing in your mind that you have to protect at all costs. And that's why it's super difficult to do that, because you get the story. That's where the story of Sam starts, right? So it's like, okay, I've got this self-concept Sam. And then now you've got this little idea in your head about who you are. So you're doing everything you were doing in the world, you're playing, but you've also got this story. And then over time, like your parents, your caregivers, your teachers start adding stuff to that story. You get told off when you, I don't know, you steal something, and you don't steal things, that's really bad. And then so now you've got this belief, right? Don't steal stuff. And then you do something where you have a, I don't know, you have a fight or you fall over. It's like, that's wrong, that's wrong. So you're internalizing all these beliefs that get added to this like self-concept, this label. And as it's been built up, feelings are being attached to those thoughts, and you start to think, oh, I can't just express who I naturally am. I've got to like somehow manage this idea of myself in order to be acceptable in the world. And that's where you get stuff like repressed shame and repressed guilt and repressed anxiety. So as you go to school, and your school teachers reinforce that like you need to get the best grades, and then you become super learner Sam who has to get all A's, and then that's another like thing that you add to your little identity that's forming. And then you hit puberty and teenage, and then you get suddenly super self-conscious, and there's all kinds of stuff going on in your mind. And then you're even more and more self-conscious. And then we just totally forget that like thing in the first place was just like a sort of a concept. It was a label. It isn't, we take it super seriously. And that's where this negative self-talk comes from. So by the time you get to 16, 18, 21, like that is you, right? Your identity's on the line. So this is why we all get self-righteous and double down when someone disagrees with our political views or something, or, you know, that's not how I think. That's how I think. You get like super black and white because your like life's on the line, your identity's on the line. So I guess if I go like one level deeper with my work, it's about like waking up to the idea that story, that concept is like just a story. There's no inherent truth to it. And if you can like drop down, I do like sort of kinds of meditations, things that like drop you into your body and into your awareness, that sort of give you more space from this self-concept. And that gives you more like, you take your thoughts less seriously and you become a bit more playful with who you are in your day. And that's my vibe. The flip side is sort of conceptual awareness, which is about concept, is non-conceptual awareness. So that's like a big, like, who are you without that concept? And it's just like, it's like more of a kind of spacious awareness vibe. Gets a bit like Buddhist, but I'm trying to make it like northern.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, this is, you know, it's definitely been part of my journey, I think, for the last couple of years, and trying to understand more these concepts, this kind of this wisdom, and thinking about the ego and letting go of all those stories. And you're right, that's why we get so offended by things, isn't it? Because like, but that's me, that's my story, this is the way I eat. And if you're telling me that I should eat in a different way, then what you're kind of saying is that you're going to live longer than me because you're eating that way because you think it's more healthy, and more health means living longer. So you're saying that I'm going to die before you, basically. And so all this stuff goes into it, doesn't it? We're offending each other's egos, and we're so attached to it all the time. And you talk about kind of dropping down and meditation work, and like some of the most profound experiences I've had is when I've really got into the meditation, really been consistent, and then really asked that question, who am I? And then when you sit there and you kind of, the boundary between you and the world kind of starts to get a little softer, and you're like, where am I? Where does Sam start and where does he end? And it's just, I mean, we're going off well on a tangent here, but it's kind of like, it is mind blowing. And I think that is then a step, isn't it, to this overthinking and to this attaching to everything and to the ego, because you're like, oh man, there's much bigger stuff going on here, and I'm getting worried about someone making a comment or being a bit rude, and it's like, oh, actually, it's just all stories, isn't it? So, so you're saying that that's part of the work that you do. Maybe we can get a little more into that then. Like, how is it that someone can, if they're recognizing overthinking in themselves, how can they start to break down that story, perhaps? How do they get started on the path?
Yeah. I mean, you've done some of the meditation stuff, so that's like really cool in terms of our conversation. So I'll try and like answer the question in terms of like, some people have never done meditation. I'll answer like in that perspective, some people have never done meditation, but also like explain the kind of journey I go on with my clients a bit. So I'm almost using like overthinking as like the presenting problem. So most people I work with, they're coming in and it's like, I'm super stressed, my mind's racing, I can't sleep. I've got this problem at work, or I hate my job, or I'm really nervous about this project I have to do. Any level of, the normal work problems from the first 6 months of my role, or my boss is a bully, or I'm managing this person who was a nightmare, or I've just been given a crazy target. So it's all the same. It's the same usual presenting problem, but I'm kind of using that almost as an invitation to drop deeper into the kind of thing that you've just been talking about, because I mean, because it's the kind of work I did when went through my burnout story. So I was in advertising for, I don't know, 20 years as a creative, and got super stressed, burnt out. I was at a sort of manager leader level, and I put too much pressure on myself to come up with brilliant ideas. So that was me, my perfectionist story. I put too much pressure on myself to keep everyone happy in my team. So that's my people pleasing story. And then I kind of like wanted to transcend the politics, which is sort of like an arrogance as well as like I was unwilling to play that game because it didn't align with my values. And there was sort of a bit of an arrogance, and arrogance is always insecurity dressed up in, a wizard's costume. So there was like all of those parts of my story were going on there. So eventually I couldn't handle it anymore. And I was bored of doing the ideas, and I thought, right, and I was super stressed. Okay, mid-40s, kind of midlife transition. So that's when I sort of trained to be. I'd already been super interested in psychology and meditation. I'd read all the books, and I was bored of self-help, self-improvement. I could see the limits of the self-improvement paradigm because I'd been doing it for so long, and I was like, okay, this self-improvement thing can be effective. It's definitely better than being a victim in life. But it's somebody who I'm going to talk to next week on his podcast, Piers Thurston. He calls it the deification of the self. And it's like we make this little mini-me, this like self-concept into God, and we do it culturally. I'm going on tangents here, but it relates to advertising because religion like died away, and then the rise of individualism, which was partly started by therapy, Sigmund Freud, but then it went into like the advertising agency came out of that vibe, and it was like, okay, we can identify these people's like lack, what they want. So they want love, they want money, they want security, and then we can create products that pretend to fill that need, and then we can use that. We can do the advert about love instead of about washing powder, and you can do way cooler shit. It's more emotional. That's the full advertising industry, right? So it's like it's built on that premise. So that's like this. This is why I'm talking about the concept of the self, which isn't even a real thing. It's like it's a label. So this is why it's super important, and absolutely ties to overthinking, because all of that self-referential thinking, the self-talk, is about that identity. It's about that concept. It's not about like who you like. The bigger you are in the world, you're when you do that dissolving boundaries thing, that's more like your true self. But we keep contracting into this little narrative in our minds. We think that's us, right? So playing with that is where I'm at. Forgotten your question now, but all of that was like super relevant, I think. What was your question?
No, well, so we were talking about the first steps, and then the first steps to kind of out of overthinking. I think it's great that you were talking about your story and the burnout and working in advertisement and starting to see it in yourself, I guess, and then how you came out the other side.
Yeah. So depending on where someone is, like most of the people I work with are very much stuck in their heads, right? Because like I was back in advertising, my day-to-day, I had lots on my plate, right? Which inherently makes things busier. And I had lots on my mind as well, which isn't the same thing as having lots on your plate. But if you have lots on your mind, you're guaranteed to be stressful. If you can have lots on your plate and be not stressed, but if you have lots on your mind, you're going to be stressed. So in terms of coaching, I would get people just to share their story first, because I just want them to feel seen and heard in that sort of therapy, safe space, build a connection. you can say what you want in here. But then I would encourage people to see what they were feeling in their body when they were thinking that thing, which is quite often very hard for people who haven't done this before to even go there, because it's just not like loads of people just live from the head up.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you do exercise, if you run and stuff, you might have a sense of what you're going in your body, or you go to the gym. But like, still, it's still like what you were saying about, I don't know whether this was before we started recording, where people go to the gym and look at their phones. They're kind of like exercising their body without being in their body. They're still in their head because they just like stare at the phone. It's like a massive disconnect. So you've got to become like embodied. It's so important. Like, it's absolutely crucial. Because what you're going for, like what's the opposite of overthinking is like a flow state, right? It's when you forget yourself. It's when you're in the moment. It's when you're in the zone, right? That's everywhere everyone wants to be. And that's like the opposite of self-referential thinking. So the first step to getting into that zone is to connect with the feelings in your body. So like when you've got this racing thought, just like put your attention into your body, like see if you can identify a feeling. Or does my stomach feel tight? Does my chest feel tight? Does it feel a bit fluttery? Do I feel something I would describe as nervous or fear or excitement even? So you're just getting a sense of like what you're feeling. And as you're doing that, you're kind of dropping into the moment, because like your body can only live in the present moment, and your mind, the problem with your mind is it's either in the future or the past. So if you become embodied, if you're in your body, like you're back in the now, right? That's where sanity is. Like it's in the present moment. So yeah, we could play with that for a bit. Or like a very simple one is just to put your attention into your feet. So like the opposite of your head, right? So like just move your attention like from your head and like ground yourself. I'm doing it now. So see if you can, So I'm just like moving my attention from my head, and then I'm kind of letting it move down my body, and then it's kind of in my feet now. And then you can feel your feet against the ground. And then like, even if you just do that for 30 seconds, it's going to slow your mind down a bit. It's going to naturally slow your breathing down a bit, probably. And you're going to just go like you're just going to be at least 10% like calmer. And then you're like, okay, that's interesting. And then you realize that you're like, your energy follows your attention. So like when you're overthinking, all your energy is in your head. If you can move your attention around, right? So you can move your attention in your feet, like your energy goes there. There's less energy to power the thoughts, and then that starts to kind of quiet a bit. That's like more embodied techniques. I mean, I'm not a big fan of like positive thinking. I do some reframe sometimes, like CBT. I do a bit of that now and again, but it's not I think any thought that you add on top of thought just creates more thought. And I think the aim of the game is to like let your mind just settle. It's like a snow globe. So if you shake a snow globe up, like your mind goes crazy, like the flakes are all over. And then if you add more thought, that just shakes the snow globe up like even more. So it's just like, no, just like move your attention, and like the flakes in the snow globe just naturally settle to the bottom. Like the system recalibrates. There's a natural homeostatic mechanism, to use a metaphor. But yeah, I find that tends to work.
And this, I mean, it's like advice that I've heard for other struggles, feeling anxious or worried or whatever. Is to try and get out of your head. And it's like you can't think your way out of these feelings, can you? And you certainly can't think your way out of overthinking. That just wouldn't work, would it? Because you are just then adding more fuel to the fire, surely. And I was really trying to think of a really great kind of clever analogy, but I can't for the time being, but maybe it'll come to me. But of course, you can't think your way out of overthinking, and it's all about the body. And there's this phrase that I think Rich Roll coined, or Tim Ferriss, one of those, that mood follows action. So it's like we can't just think our way out of these feelings that we're having. You've got to do something, and that would inevitably be something with your body, whether it's going for a walk or breath work. But even something like those two simple practices that you just mentioned there, getting down into your feet, just arriving at the present moment, and it just quietens everything down, isn't it? And that's when you create a bit of space and go, right, okay, I see what's going on here. I'm overthinking right now, and it's affecting me, and it's not productive, it's not useful. So actually, if I just a little bit, maybe I can find a path here out of this that will be actually useful.
Yeah, you said loads of really valuable stuff there. I'll reiterate both of those points and elaborate.
Yeah.
So you can't think your way out of a feeling 100%. That's a super powerful insight. So by definition, you can't think your way out of overthinking, because that's even before the feeling goes on.
Yeah.
So absolutely. But to recognize that you can't think your way out of a feeling, which is a lot of what overthinking is, right? So we feel some level of stress or fear in our body. We try and think our way out of that feeling. I really don't want to feel this feeling. It's horrible. Come on, brain, come up with a bright idea.
Yeah.
You must be able to solve this. So fix tomorrow before tomorrow's happened. And then your brain's just thinking. So 100%, that's the truest thing anyone's ever said. And so what you do there, you don't even try and fix the feeling. So you can't fix you out of a feeling either. So you get present with the feeling, and you kind of allow it's all about you allow the feeling to be there. You accept it. There's a tendency to once you get into the feeling that I really want this to go away as fast as possible. Even if you pretend you don't, you're being all zen, but there's a little impatient part of you, or me definitely.
Yeah, me too.
It's all right, I'm there now. Come on, rock off. Yeah, I've given you 10 seconds of my attention. But you kind of just have to allow it. And then that will gradually, I would call this almost aligned with non-conceptual intelligence. Your body's natural intelligence will just shift that. It'll shift in some way. And if you just allow it, it'll relax, and you'll feel more spacious. You'll feel calmer. You'll feel, yeah. That's I use something called internal family systems in my coaching, which is sort of a kind of a therapy, but it's very much the process is what I've described is that. And then the other thing you said, which is more top level overthinking advice, which is Tim Ferriss's maybe mood follows action. Yeah. Do something. Take action, and your mood will change if the mood changes after you've started to do something, not before you've done something. And even just super basic stuff, which I tell people when I'm doing my, presentation skills training, just, basic distraction, watch a movie or go for a walk, or anything that just takes you, put your attention on something. I was watching the Olympics BMX. I was watching it with my daughter this afternoon, right?
Yeah.
And I was I had some work to do. For that 20 minutes, I was just in the zone watching those dudes, those BMXers. I was in a flow state, just watching them be in a flow state. I couldn't take my eyes off it. And that's that's so captures your attention. And that's the opposite of overthinking, what they're doing.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny, isn't it? Watching the Olympics, I'm I would never watch a downhill slalom kayak competition, but the Olympics is on, so I'm going to watch these people kind of go around little poles down some water. I'm what is going on? But of course, it's incredibly impressive and skillful, and the strength that they have. And yeah, I caught some of the BMX, and of course the gymnastics you watch, you're just how on earth can a human body do that? But like you said, it relates to this overthinking that these people have. They've practiced and practiced and practiced, but then surely they have their routines, don't they, to quieten their mind, to pause. I think I even saw a video of it, maybe on LinkedIn or something. Look, these 3 steps that Simone Biles took just before she went on the floor or whatever it was. It's she took a breath to ground herself. She said to herself something "You can do it," and then she did her little cue, whatever it is, sticking her hand up or whatever. And because then it's right, game time now, and then you're into it. But yeah, it's funny that you can that you say that distraction, like, that's okay sometimes, isn't it? Yeah, like, that's okay. And I think sometimes maybe us in the self-help and the self-development world, it's like, no, I need a tool, I need something, I need an app or whatever it is to kind of like get me out of this funk. And actually, maybe it is just sticking on Friends, just watching it, laughing it, and just like decompressing that way, or going for a walk. How often do we go for a walk and there's this problem that's been stewing in our mind that we can't get over, and you go for a walk and a solution comes to you, or you just feel a little bit calmer about it because you've kind of had that chance to process it. So it's all good stuff, man. It's all good stuff.
100%. Yeah. Walks are like, I used to do walks all the time when I was working in advertising, when I was stuck. I had to come up with ideas, like lots of ideas a week. And you can easily get into like, overthinking about that and tired. And you're not going to do your best work when your brain's like buzzing. But I used to ride my bike to work, and that like ride home was like a godsend. Like I couldn't think of it when I was at work. I'd thought of it by the time I got home, and it had nothing to do with my brain. It was all to do with my feet moving around the pedals. It was the body. But yeah, go for a walk and like look at the actual trees and stuff. Don't just like look at nature. Try and do something a bit more expansive with your attention than staying in the thought loop.
Yeah, don't go for a walk just staring at your phone the whole time.
No, don't stare at your phone. I mean, even just watching the Olympics now, we're talking when the Olympics in Paris are on. I'd be watching the swimming the past few nights, and they've mentioned overthinking at least like once a night.
Oh, really?
So it's very because the only thing, they've done all the training, they know if they let their body do the thing, they've got this, right? Like they're going to perform to their best. So the only thing that they can sabotage themselves in, the 2 hours before the actual race is their own minds. So yeah, they had Simone Biles' thing is like a very common, it's a rule of three people have quite often: a breath, a thing, and then a trigger, like a belief. I think Rebecca Adlington, the swimmer, she's called that, isn't she?
Yeah.
She's the commentator. She was saying she used to just keep doing. She used to say like three things to do with the race. Like it was almost like a mantra. So this isn't correct, but it's ballpark. Like high elbows, 38 strokes per length, and then like some, I don't know, bilateral breathing. She had like three technical things that she would just like say over and over again. So like she that helped her, not let any other thoughts come into her mind. So it was just like a mantra. And I was like, okay, whatever works for you I'm down with.
Yeah. It's I love it. I mean, I've had sports psychologists on the show, and I love the lessons that we can learn from these athletes is really cool. And it's my favorite. I've said it loads of times on this podcast. My favorite thing to watch on Netflix is the sports documentaries. The Last Dance, Last Chance U. I even watched the one about the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders as well the other day. I was like, there's no way I'd want to watch that. But actually, it was another sports doc. And yeah, there were some very pretty girls to look at. But at the same time, there were lots of lessons in it as well. It wasn't just about the pretty girls. But are you tempted to write an overthinking, overthinking in sport book? Surely that would be cool.
I love the subject. I absolutely, like you, I've watched all those. I used to live in America for a bit, and I got into the LA Lakers. So I was mad on the Last Dance. And then I watched that Last Chance U series. It's awesome.
Oh, it's so good.
It's just, I love that stuff. Like I absolutely can't get enough of it. Even though some of the techniques are a bit questionable in terms of
the coaching. Yeah, the coaching techniques are a bit dodgy,
Yeah, absolutely. But sport is like work only times 50, isn't it? Because there's so much more on the line, and you've trained such fine margins between winning and losing, and being able to perform at your best is so important. Like on that given day, when who knows, you can't control the amount of sleep that you've got the night before, and then randomly you've trained 4 years for this one event. And even Adam Peaty, he woke up with like COVID, right?
Wow.
What a nightmare. You've got to be able to do some like powerful mind stuff to like, okay, like just zone in, do my best. Like, yeah, it's super impressive. But getting out of your own way, like that applies to every single thing in life, from like parenting to what you do in your work to high level sports. The more you're in your own way, the more you've got that self-referential thinking, the more aware of that story you have, almost certainly the worse. The more likely you are to sort of get stressed out and not perform at your best. But that's not a sort of what's the word? An injunction, like an order that somehow you can suddenly stop doing that, because that will just stress you out even more. It's becoming just, it's easing into it. It's like becoming just more aware of those stories, more aware of those thoughts. And curiosity is massive for me. That was one of the things I liked. That's one of my strengths, I would say. And I needed it in advertising to come up with ideas. I'm super interested in human behavior, but also like that curiosity about your own behavior. Like, we're too quick to make conclusions about ourselves. So like by the age of 13, oh, I'm not very good at maths or whatever. Like these beliefs just get like, battened down, fixed into place. But like the kind of, you've got to go back in and look with curiosity and say, is this actually true? Like, even to the level of what you're doing with meditation, like what even is this self? What am I?
Yeah.
And there's like a treasure trove of insight you can find there. And it's like genuine truth as well. Like it's like, not, you don't have to have faith in it. It's not like a religion. Like, you can experience things from it, like in real time. It's not like some random guru telling you nonsense. Like, you can literally experience it for yourself.
Yeah. So is this like the answers are within? Is it Rumi that said, there's a voice that doesn't speak, listen? Something like that is one of his lines. And
Yeah.
was it, do you use the phrase internal, what was it? Internal family? I can't remember what you said. Is that this
internal family system?
Is that this? Is that listening to your inner voice? Or is that something else? Have I got that wrong?
It's a good question. It's realizing that you have many inner voices.
Okay.
So what the model of internal family systems, at its core, it has something called self in presence. So that's like when you're in meditation and like you're being aware of your thoughts, that's like self, like Eckhart Tolle talks about the power of now, the presence. Like, that self in presence is your sort of true nature. That's there from when you were born as a baby, before you developed all these concepts. It's just like it's your natural intelligence. It's the same intelligence that makes like an acorn grow into an oak tree, or your heartbeat, or your body's like super intelligent, and it's got nothing to do with your like intellect or your rational thinking. It's just super intelligent. So but you cannot get there through your rational intelligence. That's what Rumi means by whatever he just said, the inner knowing thing, right? You can't like think your way to that. It's like a felt sense of, gets like too esoteric in a way, but
it's what we're here for, man.
I would definitely encourage you to do this.
Yeah.
So internal family systems, right? You sort of like you see yourself as parts. So you see your personality as parts instead of like one thing. So with me, or you could have like so I've got a part of me that's an overthinker. I've got a part of me that's a perfectionist. I've got a part of me that is a people pleaser. I've got a part of me that has imposter syndrome. I'm just reeling off the common ones in my coaching. There's part of me that's like, I don't know, doesn't want to disappoint anybody. It's so like all these, instead of seeing them as just a one amorphous like you can start like noticing when those parts come online. So any thinking that relates to like impatience, all right, my impatience part is online now. And then you go into your body and go, what does that part feel like in my body? And there'll be some level of contraction, like you'll feel tightness in your stomach or chest, or you might give you a headache or something. It just feels off. And then you go, well, that's weird. And then you can like sort of settle into that like part, and it almost becomes like this little sub-personality, and you can relate to it though from this like presence, this self thing. And that's like, awareness is another word for that. So then you can like bring it into this light of awareness, and it's sort of, if you don't over try to fix it, it can realize that part. This sounds so weird, but I've done this and it's genuinely transformative. That part can sort of relax and realize, because that part really thinks it has to control your life. and it can realize, oh, hang on, this
quieten
like
down, like
older version of me is in charge
yeah.
now. I don't need to like drive the car. I'm like I'm the kid in the back seat. Like this adult Andrew's got the car, right?
Nice.
But before that, this like little 6-year-old's like thinks it's driving down the M1. So no wonder it's freaking out, right? So it's like, because it's trapped. It's like a sort of, you can relate it to trauma. It's like it's a frozen part of you. But then when you bring it into awareness, it like sort of melts if you let it relax, and then it becomes part of like the flow of the presence, the bigger you. And that's that's a therapy technique for how you can deal with psychological conditioning. I mean, it goes deeper into proper, I'm not a qualified therapist, but I kind of use it within the scope of professional, like the work I do with professionals. But, qualified therapists do that with like serious trauma, because it's, again, you'd have to ask therapists what they think of it. But I think why I like that is it doesn't demonize the person. So it doesn't make them wrong for anything. So you're not ill. In that model, you're never ill because you've got that self as presence who could never possibly be any. That's just perfect, right? Because it's just perfect awareness. And then it's just like, it's almost like, oh, it's a misunderstanding. Or it's like, rather than like, I have bipolar disorder or, chronic anxiety, which is just another label that you stick, you kind of can relate. All right, I've got this part of me that's that's a bit anxious. There's part of me that's a bit of an overthinker, but I've got this other part of me that's always in the present moment, that is absolutely, solid and there, and always is innately mentally healthy. Like there's an innate level of well-being, and that's like true. That's not even like, I mean, I did. Is the time? Shall I give a quick example of
Yeah,
how
please.
this kind of worked for me?
Please do.
If you've got, just to sort of make it context. So this was more of a sort of a therapy thing, but I kind of almost did it because I wanted proof of concept. Right? I'm like, I'm not good. This sounds a bit. I love this, but I'm not going to train in it if it's just me reading a book. So I found this therapist coach who's like specializes, and I had like a sort of a massive thing. I had asthma. I still have asthma, and I had this sort of chronic addiction to taking my asthma inhaler. It became like a psychological crutch, right? Based on this sort of traumatic incident when I was 3, which was, and I was thinking, right, if I can, I'd been addicted to this asthma inhaler for like at least 20 years, right? And I couldn't leave the house without it, and I'd take it more than prescribed, and I knew I was taking it more than prescribed, but it was almost like more of an anxiety reliever than it was an asthma reliever, because those things have become like conflated in the kind of trauma. So I thought, right, if I could like nail this asthma inhaler addiction using this internal family systems, like I'm gonna buy into this model, like absolutely. And like it totally worked. Like it totally. I'm not kidding. It was like almost miraculous. I'd already had like traditional psychotherapy. In my mid-30s, I was going to train to be a psychotherapist. So I had like a year of therapy 3 times a week. So I'd done like proper psychodynamic therapy for like a lot of sessions, which was helpful. I'm not like dismissing that, but this was like for this one particular like isolated thing, it worked super well. So I just naturally, you can do this like talking, but I just naturally went to my body. So I got in touch with this part of me, this little anxious kid, that's super scared of the asthma thing and feels like it needs the asthma inhaler. And I kind of started to relate to it with the therapist's help. It was super grounded. She was really good. And it just helped my system relax. And then over like, I don't know, maybe 2 months of sessions, like, and it brought up some fear, and I had to go there because like it's like opening a door to like a dark room that you don't want to go in. But like you open the door and you realize it's not quite as bad as you think, and then you feel the fear that was associated with that, and then shame or anxiety or whatever, guilt, and then that like you could sort of that like in my imagination I had an image of that like kid. And the kid, over time, that kid literally started changing in my imagination. It became like a teenager, and then it became like an adult, and then it became like, oh, I don't need you. That doesn't need to be trapped anymore. And that kid like almost turned into like a playful child again. And literally, I stopped being addicted to my asthma inhaler over the course of about, I don't know, literally 2 months. I went from taking it like religiously, like 4 times a day, and never leaving it in the house, to like taking it maybe once a day, and then like no times a day, and then only, you know, when you're supposed to take it, when you're having an actual asthma attack. It was like genuinely, I was like, what? That's like weirdly effective. So I was like, yeah, I'm down with that as an idea.
Sold. Yeah.
I mean, it might not work for all, you know, more complex psychological stuff, but for the people, the things I work with, it's like if they're down with going there, some people aren't down with going down with doing it because they're too scared of even getting into their body. But if you slow down and go over time, it can be really, it's sort of a reframe, but it's almost like an embodied reframe. And it's like, it frees up stuck energy, if you want to get a bit more esoteric about it. But yeah, it absolutely works in my experience. And then all of that overthinking around the asthma inhaler was just like laughable. Just was like, yeah, don't need to do that anymore then.
A respiratory nurse came to one of my breathwork workshops, actually, and we got onto this topic of inhalers, and I'm asthmatic too since I was young, and we talked about and talked about blue inhalers, and she was saying with something that kind of, I think, you know, proves your story in some way, in that an inhaler can't act that quickly. It takes some time to go down into your lungs. And so there are so many people, aren't they, that are like struggling to breathe. They take their inhaler and they go, and it's like instant. And it's like, but the inhaler can't work that fast. So that tells us this is not an inhaler thing, is it? This is a psychological thing. And I see it in myself, but I see it still now in friends and other people and children at school, of course, that take it, an instant relief. And it's like, actually, no, there's more going on here. But of course, if you say to people, it's all in your head, that's not going to get you very far very quickly, is it? But it's like, well, let's do some work like you did. You understood what was going on, and you had to do a little digging, and it's a little painful. But out the other side, if that meant that you weren't relying on this object anymore, then that's a huge win. A huge win.
Yeah. So I still take like the brown inhaler, the Becketide one, but the blue one, I just only take it when, on the very rare occasion where I am actually breathless. But this is a niche topic, but I think it speaks to a bigger picture. So that, like, it's not all in your head. Like, that was genuinely in my body, but it was anxiety that was in my body. Yeah. So it's like kind of, and it's really hard to tell the difference between an asthma attack and an anxiety attack. It's like, it feels exactly the same.
So a short, shallow breath,
yeah, by definition. So like, 100%, it was a psychological story, because every time I took that inhaler, miraculously, I was fine. Like, immediately, it was definitely a psychological thing, as proved by the internal family systems work. The idea of the placebo effect came into my mind when you just said that. Could just be that blue thing's an amazing placebo effect, right? It's like, take that, sorted. Yeah. I'm fascinated by placebo effect. I think that is a genuine thing, like 100%.
Oh, for sure. Have you read, I'm just looking behind me, The Expectation Effect by David Robson?
Yeah, that's brilliant.
It's so good, isn't it? Totally. So good. Yeah. It just made me think of that as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I have to say, Andrew, the conversation has gone in on different routes that I didn't expect. I didn't expect it to get quite so deep and spiritual and Buddhist, but I'm all about it. So it was great. I don't know if a part of me was expecting more of that kind of like productivity, hacky, self-help kind of solutions to overthinking. But no, it wasn't about that. Are you still there? Because you're frozen.
100%. Yeah.
No, there you've unfrozen. Sorry. You're back again.
Yeah. Again. No, I think that's what people do expect, top level sometimes with the overthinking thing. But that was never my sort of interest, because you can Google that shit, right? It's like, it's not that interesting to me. Like, so I was trying to relate a presenting problem to the depth of my experience and see how many different levels I could talk to it at. So in my book, it's kind of, I'll send you a copy of my book if you want. I think you'll enjoy it just from the bookcase that you've just described on like what you've already read. So I talk about I talk overthinking like from the level of your thoughts first. So there's techniques around, getting awareness from your thoughts, and then your body, and then it goes into a bit of the psychology around like your inner overthinker and how it relates to emotions and neuroscience. And then the second half is like, so the subtitle is make peace with your unruly mind, create something you didn't think was possible. So the second half is like, okay, so now from this calmer place, like how can you do something that you didn't think you could do? So it becomes more of like a coaching thing. So there's like an invitation to, get out of your comfort zone and just do something that's more aligned with your heart, which mirrors my career story, basically. I was all in my head, and now I, lead from the heart and use my thinking mind to support that rather than just being exclusively trapped in my intellect for what it's worth.
Yeah. It's an empowering, positive message, and I think this is what the world needs, isn't it? We do need to go a little deeper, but people are still looking for the quick, superficial fixes, aren't they? But this is what we need. We need some deeper work, and we need to think about that inner child, and we need to listen to those voices in our head and start dissecting them and doing all these approaches that you mentioned. I just think it's what's needed. It's maybe not what's wanted from lots of people who just want to take a pill to help them lose weight or whatever it is. But there's some deeper work to be done, isn't there?
100%. And like I would class my approach as like psychology, and I don't like the word spirituality, but there is a psycho-spiritual thing, because I have done the sort of things that have been inspired by Buddhism and stuff. That like awareness piece, like, which sounds really nebulous, and like people just don't even know what you're talking about necessarily. Like, it's unbelievably powerful and useful if you go there, like with curiosity. Like, so it's just as powerful as like the psychological therapy stuff. I wouldn't throw any of those babies out with the bathwater. I think both of them together are just like, that's an amazing idea. That's why I like acceptance and commitment therapy, because that sort of does blend them a little bit. There's like an observing self, which is what drew me to that. Yeah. Can I tell you an anecdote from my book? It's like it ties in with the like Buddhist thing. This is like a story that this is a quick fix, right, in the form of a story.
Okay.
So when I was doing research for this book, I came across this TED talk, and I think she's called Anna Debenham, like the woman who does the TED talk. And she's talking about, she went into prisons, right? It was all about anxiety and stuff, and thinking, and thinking in a new way. And she was in America. She went into the US prison system, and she was helping some of the sort of prisoners like deal with anxiety, right? And the thing she was thinking was, she was basically like teaching them how to do, like, to observe your thoughts, to make friends with your thoughts, like not to treat them as like, something that's there to hurt you or sabotage you or beat you up. And then, so she was talking about there's a concept of in Buddhism of like, don't invite your thoughts to tea. So like, don't let your thoughts outstay their welcome. So let them come in, wait in the hallway, and then leave. Don't say, come in, hang around for as long as you want. And then this guy, like one of the prisoners in the workshop, was like, so he came up with like the best metaphor of all time. He said, so imagine I'm sitting in my living room, and like all of a sudden a chicken walks in. And like normally, like if a chicken walked in, like I'd freak out, right? Because like a chicken's just walked in. But if I freaked out, like then the chicken would freak out, and it would be flapping around, and it would fly into the window, and it would fly into the chair. And like we'd just stare each other up, and we'd be super stressed. So he's saying like what you're saying instead, like when that chicken walks in, I should just like say, hello chicken, and like let it walk around the room, like have a nosy, have a little peck at like the carpet, and then if I just like silently chill with the chicken, then it'll just find its way back out. Now I was like, yeah, that is like the best metaphor for how to deal with overthinking like ever.
Perfect. That's perfect. How many of us would benefit from just watching that chicken peck around for a little bit rather than freaking out? Reminds me, you see plenty of those videos, don't you, online of like a bird flying through the window and everyone losing their mind or whatever it is. But actually, if you just kind of observed it, paused, and then it'll make its way out eventually.
Yeah. Don't chase the chicken. That's the catchphrase. That's the quick fix. Don't chase the chicken.
Oh, title for the episode, maybe.
Yeah, definitely.
Get all people thinking. Right. Andrew, thanks so much for your time coming on the show. Like I said, it went in lots of different directions that perhaps I wasn't expecting, but that's what this is all about. And I'm just so grateful for you for taking the time to come and chat to me about an important topic and giving some real solutions of some actual substance, not quick fixes, actual substance. And that's awesome.
Yeah, thanks, mate. It's been really enjoyable. I love the space that you gave me to riff on the topic, and also that I think we've been in the same reading bit of the bookshop. I think so. We seem to be on the same page about lots of things. So
literally,
I think we stuck to the core of overthinking, but it was it was really good fun
for sure. I mean, you mentioned about books. Have you read Robert Wright as well? Why Buddhism is True. Do you know that one?
I don't think.
Yes. No. I'm so glad I've given you a recommendation you haven't heard because that cool. Is him looking at why Buddhism is true. So merging that spiritual knowledge with the actual science. Really good book. Check it out.
Oh, definitely. That's cool. Yeah, cool. Thanks, man.
But talking of books, your book, The Overthinker's Guide to Life, where can people get a copy?
The print version, so I did like a colour print version. It combines like my sort of creative background with my writing background. So that's on Amazon. So it's probably best, Google my name, like Andrew Sewell. The book's called The Overthinker's Guide to Life. And then if you want the online version, you can get a PDF on my website, which is overthinkers.co.uk.
Brilliant. Before I let you go, I do ask 3 quick-fire questions for every guest. Have you got time for those? No worries if not, but if you have.
Yeah. I forgot you were going to ask them, but I've got time, man. Just say whatever comes to my mind.
That's perfect. That's what we want. So the first question is, what's one lesson you wish you'd have been taught when you were a child?
Teenager. I think it goes to teenager. Relax. Like, that's a really generic thing. Stop taking yourself so seriously. Just like chill out, man. Yeah, definitely.
This is a lesson that I'm still trying to teach myself at the moment. Stop taking yourself so seriously, Sam. It's all okay. Let's try and have a bit more of a laugh. I love it.
Yeah.
Next one. What's one habit you've maybe introduced into your life, or even a habit that you've kicked, you got rid of, that's helping you feel happier and healthier?
Definitely meditation was a game-changing thing for me. Not in like because it took me from that like sort of mindfulness thing, which I started doing about 14 years ago, like deeper into the more of where that's coming from. So now I don't really have like a formal meditation practice, but I think I have many moments in the day where I just like drop into that sort of like awareness space. But I think that's become a habit over time, which has made my life loads better. Like just the quality of each day, just a lot better. So yes, it would be that. And another one, which was easily my most difficult habit to break, was sugar, which I spent about at least 7 years trying to kick sugar. And only this year, like I did it properly. And now I'm in that place where I'm sort of in that like, I'd call it maintenance. So I'm back on it a bit, but I'm not like, I don't eat. I used to have a massive sweet tooth. I'd cane my daughters like M&Ms. Do you know what I mean? Like all the biscuits would be gone in the tin. Now I'm much more like, okay, I'll have some dark chocolate. I'm very much on that vibe. But yeah, kicking that was like, and I did a proper sugar detox. That was amazing in terms of how much it changed my, how I felt in my body. Like the sugar, the detox of the sugar made me feel loads better when it wasn't there. I didn't realize how bad it was making me sluggish and like weird pains and stuff. It was a bit bizarre. I mean, once you read the book, you realize it's true. Like I read a bit of the science around, sugar, the multiple effects of refined carbs and sugar. Yeah. So, but even when all my friends, coaches, and they've all done this stuff, I was still so addicted to sweets. I was like, yeah, I can still do that and get away with it. But it made a big difference kicking that habit.
Nice. It's the first time I've heard the word cane in a while. I remember that from being a
sugar kid.
So good. I caned a bag of chips or something. I loved it. So what did that look like? Let's linger on that a little. Just cutting out refined sugars. So anything like sweets, chocolate, pastry, that kind of thing. Was it just getting rid of that? Yeah.
Yeah, I tried before. I read this book. I think it's literally called The Sugar Detox. So for the first 3 days, you have to cut out everything, even fruit. You can have sort of, chicken and, broccoli and stuff. And water and certain kinds of nuts and stuff. But then after 3 days, you gradually introduce other things back in. But you don't introduce like white flour or pasta or white bread or obviously any kind of crisps or sweets or cakes. And then kind of it lasts for like a month, this thing. But over the month, you're sort of adding certain things like cheese and the odd glass of red wine. And it was hard, like the first 3 days, felt like a proper, coming off heroin. I don't know, I've never come off heroin, but it felt like properly hard. It was, oh my God, I just have to stay in bed, until get through. I couldn't do much while it was happening. And I drank about 20 gallons of water. But after that, I started noticing the benefits. I was like, oh, this is good. I feel like a bit got weirdly more energy, and I'm not experiencing that afternoon crash vibe. And then after about a week, I was just more stabilized. I lost loads of weight. I lost about, a stone in a month. Wow. So it was I didn't even do it as a weight loss program, but it just fell off basically. Yeah, God, I ended up weighing less. I'm 53 now. I ended up weighing less than when I was 21, really? At the end of this detox. I was like, wow, that's crazy. And I wasn't even doing it for that particularly. Like I said, now I've slipped a bit, but I've kicked the sort of that compulsion that or when I get a bit tired or when there's I have space between coaching clients, I'll have a bag of crisps. I just don't do that anymore, basically. I just have some strawberries. Yeah. Just have something that's healthier, basically.
Well, I think that's why sometimes it sounds extreme, but going cold turkey and just completely cutting yourself something out can just be that for me, I just find if I'm really black and white about something, then it means I can be much more disciplined around it and just get it done and then kind of adjust from there and start to reintroduce it. So it's like you're saying that you cut it out completely for 3 days and then, it started to evolve from there. And that it's the same with me. And I've also found that once I did that and started to eat less processed and sugary things, that your taste buds just change, don't they? And now,
oh my God, yeah.
So now you'll have something like that, and it's like, whoa, and it even kind of makes me feel a bit sick, to be honest. If I have too much of it in one sitting, it just makes me feel a bit crap. And so it's like, okay, I just I'd got used to eating it without thinking, and I think that's the case for so many people that it's just become the new normal to have crisps and chocolate every single day. And, I'm not judging anyone's choices, but I'm just thinking that if you try cutting it out for a week and then just go for other options, see what happens to your energy levels and even your skin and everything, what could happen. It's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, just quickly to sort of add what you said there, 100%. I had an apple on day 3. It was like
the sweetest
a
thing
magic
ever.
apple. It was unbelievable. It was genuinely mind blowing. Yeah. It's that recalibration of your taste buds. It doesn't take that long to do that, to recalibrate. And then, I looked younger. Even my male mates, take the piss. They don't give compliments. They're like, oh my God, you look significantly younger after 2 weeks. It was, nice. I definitely wouldn't judge anyone when it comes to this, because the amount of, like I say, it took me till I was 53 to do this. But that is a thing that's worth doing. Yeah.
Last one. These were supposed to be quick fire, weren't they? The last one is, if you could give everyone in the world one book, which book would you give them?
I've read probably as many books as you have, which is like all of the self-help section, all of the spirituality section. Right, okay, so I'm going to go back to the start. So when I was about 16, my mother, God knows why she bought me this book. I think she knew I was into psychology. She bought me this book called Life and How to Survive It. And it was written by John Cleese, like the comedian from Monty Python. And he wrote it with he had a family therapist called Robin Skinner. And this book is like a dialogue between them. And John Cleese is adding, a bit of the humor and his experience as a patient. And Robin's like giving his worldview on like life and how to survive it. I probably mentioned it because it relates to internal family systems a bit. Only Robin Skinner's more of a family therapist, but it was very, it was based on family dynamics. But the simplicity within which he explained like the difference between good mental health and poor mental health and how you would change. And this Robin guy was also into like a bit of yoga and meditation. So there was a bit of the spirituality stuff in there as well. And like that book just like captivated me when I was 16. And almost I sort of, in a way, tried to live out the truth of it, like throughout, like for many years. It was almost like the best career guidance book I ever read. It was like, all right, I'm just going to do what he says. I'm balls to all this like corporate career stuff. I'm following, that's my path. I'm going to do that thing, right? So yeah, I'd recommend that. It's like, because it's a very down to earth introduction to some pretty useful, what could be complex concepts, but like it's simplified and made into a conversation.
Oh, wow. What a great recommendation. I've never heard of that book. So I'm definitely going to be getting on Amazon and ordering it. Sounds great.
Cool. Nice one. Yeah, it'd be brilliant. Let me know what you think.
Will do. Right. So let's wrap up. Thank you again, Andrew. Really appreciate your time, mate. And yeah, I'm looking forward to staying in touch and perhaps having you back on again soon, because I think there is a lot that we could talk about.
Yeah, it'd be an absolute pleasure, Sam. It's been great fun.
Thank you for tuning in. I really hope you found my conversation with Andrew insightful. If you enjoyed the episode, please share it with friends, family, and colleagues who you think would find it interesting too. And you can also support the podcast by following and rating the show on whichever app you're listening on. Thanks again, and I look forward to bringing you another episode soon.